Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 3 and speak with the NDP Member of Parliament serving the folks of Outremont in Montreal and also the leader of the official opposition, Mr. Tom Mulcair. Good morning, Mr. Mulcair. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty.
Good morning to you, sir. How are you? Long time no talk.
Great to be on again. Well, we're doing fine. We're doing our job up in Ottawa, holding Stephen Harper to account. We're the only ones who have ever been able to stand up to him, and Canadians appreciate it.
Well, there's certainly a lot of steam and energy and heated discussion going on in the House of Parliament. What would you like to discuss in particular this morning, sir?
Well, one of the main issues that we've been dealing with up there is what's called Bill C-23, and it's a new law with regard to the elections that the Conservatives have the gall to call the Fair Elections Act. It's a little bit like George Orwell's Newspeak. Anytime the Conservatives call something fair, you know that it's about them trying to cheat for the future. Don't forget, as you know, Patty, in 2006, the Conservatives got caught with the famous In-N-Out scandal, and they were convicted on that one. In 2011, we had thousands of illegal robocalls going out, and it's been proven in federal court that those calls were made using the Conservative data bank. So they have a history of this behavior, and now what they're trying to do is basically make sure that there will be no more investigations in the future, because they're going to be taking away key powers from Elections Canada and trying to stack the deck in their own favor, for example, by taking away people's right to use their voter card as ID. So that's really going to play out a lot in the next campaign, and we want Canadians to understand what Stephen Harper's up to.
I'm trying to follow along with the Fair Elections Act debate, and of course, when the backlash coming from an assortment of absolute experts in the field, not only academics but former heads of Elections Canada, including the current gentleman in that post, then there is obviously something to it. I think we're maybe losing sight of, in my own personal opinion, sir, what the most important facet is of this, and this is the removal of some of the control and oversight for Elections Canada and those who can indeed manage it. I think the vouching issue is maybe a red herring that can, speak to potential supporters of either party, whether it be youth or seniors, the transients, Aboriginals and otherwise. I think the vouching issue, we can probably deal with that effectively. It's the removal of control at Elections Canada that troubles me.
Patty, I couldn't agree with you more. And what was interesting yesterday, and this is a woman who's so widely respected, it's not even funny, Sheila Fraser, Canada's former Auditor General, came out strongly against this so-called Fair Elections Act yesterday, and she zeroed in on exactly what you're talking about. She said, look at what they're doing to Elections Canada, look what they're doing to the investigators, look what they're doing to the Commissioner of Elections. She said that's the nub. She's been an independent officer of Parliament. She knows what it's like to get pushed back. She's the woman who courageously went after the Liberal Party for the infamous sponsorship scandal where the Liberal Party stole tens of millions of dollars of taxpayers' money. So she knows what it's like to try to do your job in those difficult circumstances, and she knows that you need a piece of legislation that is rock solid. So what she's concentrating on is Stephen Harper's attempt to water down the ability of the Commissioner of Elections and of the head of Elections Canada to do their jobs properly in the public interest.
Another point being put forward, though, and I think this bears some conversation, is that people are saying whether or not this is a political maneuver to, pander to their own acknowledged base as a Conservative Party. Aren't the people of the country also smart enough to hopefully be engaged, remove some of the apathetic opinion and attitude some have, remove some of the cynicism, take back the power of the people by the people, and who cares what the Federal Elections Act says if we can deal with the piece about Elections Canada and oversight, which is critical. But all this bit about them pandering to their own base, is that not just insinuating that we're all too stupid to make up our own mind? And the electorate, it's about time we take back some of this power that's been removed from us in the first place. And this act, whether or not some of the measures inside it are unfortunate, unfair, misguided, and or potentially immoral and illegal, can't the people of the country be trusted to do the right thing on their own accord?
Yeah, but the right thing includes voting.
I understand that.
Patty. Yeah, no. And if they're taking, in the last election, Patty, 40% of Canadians did not vote. 65% of young people aged 18 to 25 did not vote. Many of them were not able to vote because that election happened on May 2nd, 2011, just as university students were going back home. They were in the middle of their exams and they were crisscrossing the country. Mm-hmm. What happens when you don't have a simple process with your voter ID card to be able to go and vote, which is something they're going to take away, is that you're making it much more difficult for certain classes of persons. I couldn't agree with you more that now that we're concentrating people's attention on this, they're starting to realize what was in there. But I do think it was pretty cynical by Stephen Harper. He figured, like usual, he would just send out one of his talking heads, in this case the insignificant Pierre Poilievre, to start snowing people about what's in the bill, saying this is a tremendous bill, nothing but good things in here. Now that every expert in the country, as you so correctly said, and by the way, not NDP experts. These are experts brought in by the Conservatives themselves who have lambasted them. There's a man named Neufeld who's an expert from BC. He wrote a report. Every single day, Pierre Poilievre and Stephen Harper would stand in the House of Commons and say, Mr. Neufeld's report says that there's massive fraud going on with regard to this so-called vouching system. Mr. Neufeld showed up in parliamentary committee and said that they were lying, that he has never said any such thing. He said that there was problems in being able to know whether the system was sufficient, and he could probably improve that. But he never talked about voter fraud. You know what Pierre Poilievre said once Neufeld contradicted him? He had the gall to say, Mr. Neufeld doesn't know what's in his own report. I mean, that's the level of arrogance that we're dealing with here. So this is a typical snow job by the Conservatives. That's why we deserve better. And that's why the NDP is doing such a strong job against Stephen Harper. We watch this every day, Patty. We know who our adversary is. But you're right. People should be able to vote in the next election, but they're not going to be. A lot of them will be disenfranchised if this thing goes through.
Yeah, but some of that, and I mean, I know that you don't have an opportunity to listen to my rantings and railings, but I do think
not often enough.
The apathy that we're suffering, it's created by politicians, but if we're waiting for you and your other learned members to correct it, it won't happen, because apathy is the friend of political parties and politicians. People can take this back. The vouching business, we can come up with a way so that people with the opportunity for special ballots, advanced polls, the general election day, we can get our ducks in a row, we can get our idea prepared that candidates see us ready to vote. The voter suppression, some of the measures taken by the Conservatives, the political victory available to you and the Liberals is to point to Mr. Poilievre's ridiculous and obscene and self-righteous attitude. And Tony Clement, same thing with so-called experts or their own anointment as being experts. Some of the people who are against this act are nominees of the Prime Minister Harper himself.
Oh, no question.
So these are atrocious things. People need to get involved and take the power back.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough, and the point well taken. But again, if you look at the constant behavior of the Conservatives under Stephen Harper, when they put together this robocall scam, they knew what they were doing. And you had to have a database. Patty, you know how elections work, where you identify your vote. You're not going to start calling your own voters and sending them to the wrong polling station. Nope. So the Conservative Party database was used because it had identified which voters were going to vote NDP and other parties and which ones were Conservative. The calls went out to the other party's voters, and they said things like this: oh, Mrs. Smith, instead of voting at the local school you always vote at, this is Elections Canada telling you have to go to the church clear across town. By the time Mrs. Smith got to the church across town, she might have been too tired or discouraged or not know what was going on and not be able to vote. The whole purpose of having Elections Canada is to make it easier to vote. They're even taking away the right of Elections Canada to inform people. They don't want him spending money informing people about the elections. That's not going to help more people vote, Patty. It's going to discourage people from voting.
It absolutely will, and we could be falling into a trap created by them, but up to us whether or not we fall into it. Maybe I'm the wide-eyed optimist and idealist that thinks that we have the opportunity to take all the power that we justly deserve back into our own hands. Before I run out of time, Mr. Mulcair, the concept of hypocrisy that you identify with the Conservatives, and we've had Mr. Trudeau taken to the mat about his open nomination business and then the removal of a candidate based on the behavior of the spouse. And then people are pointing to you and your party with the creation of these outreach offices in 2 regions of the country where you need to do better to have any hope of unseating the Conservative Party. Using parliamentary money, people are wondering, and I think it's a reasonable question, how these outreach offices can actually orchestrate their day-to-day business and not doing political business on behalf of the NDP at the same time, while using money that is distinctly and clear-cut is not allowed to be used for that purpose. How do you respond to that charge?
Well, I don't know if there's a charge.
Well, how about the one that I'm making? How do you have both? How do you have it both ways on that front? How do you have outreach that is not to further the political aspirations of the NDP when it's very clear cut? And you would be the first to hold Mr. Harper accountable, and so you should, for using money from Parliament, whether it be to promote the dam, job grants that is not existent, the Canadian Economic Action Plan. We're all tired of it, but people are questioning that. Well, at least I am, sir. How do you respond?
Well, it's not very complicated, Patty. Here's how it works. We have people who work for the party, who do party work. They're involved in a different union. They're involved in a different job description, and the work they do is partisan work. Parliamentary staff do work for caucus services. It's very simple. It's black and white, and we have always been super careful to respect it. But now that you talk about political maneuverings, let me just say that I was listening to Dale Kirby a little bit earlier, and I almost dropped, I had forgotten, when you introduced him as the Liberal member, he was elected as an NDP member, as you know. The people who elected him as an NDP member never had a word to say about it. So as I hear him shilling for the Liberal Party, I feel it's only fair that I get a chance to say that I know Sheila O'Leary. I think that she's a woman of substance. She's shown extraordinary leadership. She's got a lot of experience, and then I hope that people will have confidence in her in Virginia Waters. She's exactly the type of leadership that the people in Newfoundland and Labrador deserve, and I think that the voters of Virginia Waters would be extremely well served by Sheila O'Leary.
It's a fascinating race for a by-election in particular. 3 quality candidates and a lot on the line for the individuals and the parties they represent. Mr. Mulcair, I appreciate your time and the phone call this morning. I enjoyed the conversation.
All the best, Paddy. Take good care. Bye-bye.
And the same to you. Bye-bye. Thomas Mulcair is the NDP member for Outremont and, of course, the leader of the official opposition, the New Democratic Party.